Everybody is freaking out about the new Georgia voting law. But I see three things happening. One, people seem to have no idea what's actually in this law. Two, people seem to be actively lying about the law for political reasons. And three, some seem to be defending it at all costs, even though some of it does suck. So let's get down into the honesty of it all. And I've got some pretty crazy stuff to show you. We're going to learn a lot here together. And then we're going to go to James Carville. And this clip, magnifique. It shows just how uninformed some people are about the Georgia voting bill. Here's the bill itself. Not the most inspiring of names. Right here, it's called a bill to be entitled an act. It's 100 pages long, and it has a lot of changes to voting in the state of Georgia. And I want to show you how people are reacting to this. I made this for you so you could see a compilation of the reactions across a bunch of media outlets. And this is pretty dire, pretty intense. So let's roll it. Here it is.
Georgia's new election law is facing legal challenges and gaining national attention tonight. 11 Alive's Naima Abdullahi explains why many call this Jim Crow 2.0.
Make no bones about it. This is like peeling back to a time in history where we had very little say in how we were going to live and who we were going to elect.
Yeah, I mean, this is very serious. We're calling it Jim Crow 2.0. They've made some recent attempts to clean up the original versions of this bill to try to make it look like they're responding to the pressure, but it's still Jim Crow. As I said the other day, I said elsewhere, it's like putting a little makeup and cologne on Jim Crow. It doesn't change the fact that it's still Jim Crow.
I mean, it's just mean and petty and very much sort of reminiscent of Jim Crow era tactics that are designed to have a chilling effect on participation.
Pretty much, you can call it what you want to call it. Joe Biden called it Jim Eagle. Basically, it's Jim Crow 2.0. We've had people say that this voter suppression thing is Jim Crow on steroids 2.0 and a suit and tie and cologne, whatever you want to call it, it's wrong.
This effort to go back to Jim Crow is absolutely shameful. And I think the most serious anti-democratic actions since Donald Trump left office. The Republican response in Georgia to losing the election is not to change their policies, not to come up with new ideas, not to try to broaden their appeal, but instead to try to stop people from voting, particularly people of color.
I'm convinced that we'll be able to stop this because it is the most pernicious thing. This makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. I mean, this is gigantic, what they're trying to do.
Words matter. So we need to stop saying words like voter restriction. We need to stop saying words like limiting ballot access. Black people are under attack by white legislators here in Georgia and throughout the country.
Some intense stuff there, obviously, and everybody's very, very passionate about this debate. But is everybody out of their mind? That's a different question. The first thing that I should put out there, Jim Crow 2.0 is a ridiculous overstatement. There's just no way around that. It's an absolutely preposterous overstatement. Jim Crow, for those you don't know, was segregation in the United States. This was black people and white people going to different bathrooms and water fountains. It was a real repression of people because of the color of their skin. This Voting Rights Act or this voting law in Georgia doesn't even target a single person based on the color of their skin. You may say it's got some negative impacts on poverty-stricken places, and you may say that those are more highly occupied by people of color in the Southeast or in Georgia, but it doesn't target specifically people of color or anyone for the color of their skin. I just want to get that out there. A comparison to Jim Crow is preposterous. But what is in this? Some significant changes to the voting in the state. The New York Times does a big rundown. Voters will now have less time to request absentee ballots. That is absolutely true. It was like 6 months or something, which seems like a really long time to me in the state of Georgia. I'm a fan of our elections in general being a lot shorter. Snap elections would be great, but it's still a significant amount of time. There are strict new ID requirements for absentee ballots. All you have to do is put something on the form that proves that you are who you say you are, and we'll get into that in a moment. It's now illegal for election officials to mail out absentee ballot applications to all voters. I think this is a bad idea. I don't think this should be the process. This is not mailing absentee ballots. It's mailing absentee ballot applications to everybody, which I find to be a fine thing to do. Drop boxes still exist, but barely. This is a weird one. Drop boxes, for the most part, didn't exist before this past election. Because of the pandemic, they put all these drop boxes throughout the state of Georgia and throughout other states. And now, this is the first thing that's actually codified the drop boxes into law. So in that way, this bill that you're seeing right here is the first time that drop boxes have ever been placed into official law in Georgia. Mobile voting centers and RV where you can vote are essentially banned. This was specifically because of the pandemic. Early voting is expanded in a lot of small counties, but probably not in more populous ones. So that's here or there. Offering food or water to voters now waiting in line risk misdemeanor charges. I'm going to get into that in just a second. Well, actually, let's jump over to this because this clip I thought, magnifique. Here is James Carville over on MSNBC talking about this Georgia law. Here's what he thinks or wants to tell you is in this bill.
It is going to make it illegal to give somebody this that's standing in line to vote. I have never heard of water being an illegal substance in the United States.
The water being an illegal substance in the United States. And this is the posting from MSNBC on YouTube. Georgia's voting bill makes water an illegal substance. You can see it right there for yourself. That's the title that they've put in here. Georgia's voting bill makes water an illegal substance. That is not true, and I'll get into more of it in a second, but here's PolitiFact saying mostly false. You can't be, as an organizer or somebody who's, let's say, from MoveOn.org on the left, handing out water bottles to people as they're going to vote in Georgia. You also can't hand out water bottles if you're, I don't know, the NRA. Political groups can't hand out food or water or anything else to entice people perhaps to vote in their way. This is not a bad thing. In fact, the idea that you can't give out water is preposterous. You can put a table out there with water on it and people can help themselves. You just can't have somebody advocating on behalf of one of the candidates or something on the ballot as they give out that water. It's not that big of a deal. Let's keep moving. Election officials can no longer accept third-party funding, a measure that nods to right-wing conspiracy theories. And then here's the actual issue I have. The Republican-controlled legislature has more control over the state election board. The Secretary of State is removed as a voting member, and the GOP-led legislature is empowered to suspend county election officials. That is all bad. That should not be in this bill. It should be nonpartisan figures who are involved in this oversight of the vote. That part is genuinely bad. On to the other stuff. When it comes to Democrats who are seemingly very against the part of this that requires you to show your ID, they are very out of touch with the average American of any stripe. And I believe a majority of Republicans certainly feel this way. I think close to, if not a majority of Democrats, people of color, people of Hispanic backgrounds, all of these people, if you ask them, do you think somebody should have to prove their identification to vote, to show an ID or otherwise? Everybody seems to agree on this, except for some members of the activist left. Here are some other myths here. The Georgia law discourages voting or suppresses voting. The bill actually preserves or expands ballot access in several important ways. It requires large precincts with lines more than an hour long to take steps like adding voting machines and election personnel for the next election. It also does not eliminate voting on Sunday. I've heard that nonstop. It does not do that. The Georgia election law suppresses the vote with onerous voter ID requirements. No, we're going to get into that a little bit more in just a second, but it's not even just about an ID. They say Georgia's new voting law makes it jail time a crime to drop off grandma's absentee ballot in a drop box. PolitiFact says no. They did not. Republicans did not eliminate early voting on Sunday in Georgia. So more and more you see this stuff. You even had the MLB jump in, and they're taking the All-Star game and all the revenue that would come with it out of the state of Georgia. That causing some controversy. That making the Braves angry. They say they're deeply disappointed by the decision of Major League Baseball to move its 2021 All-Star game. This was neither our decision nor our recommendation, and we're saddened that fans will not be able to see this event in our city. Real problem here is wherever they put this game, you better hope that their voter laws are less strict than they are in Georgia right now. Because in many places like New York, they're very comparable to how they are under this new set of laws in the state of Georgia. And that comparison is going to happen no matter what. The real thing that I find odd is the president was in support of this. President Biden is saying he supports corporations and the MLB and others taking business out of Georgia, sort of saying open war on a state, on one of our states. Yeah, go at them because of what happened. And this is sort of open warfare, not just on the people who did this, but on everybody who's in the state where these people are. People who had nothing to do with this will face economic hardships because of these changes. You also see the Atlanta mayor saying, just as elections have consequences, so do the actions of those who are elected. Unfortunately, the removal of the MLB All-Star Game from Georgia is likely the first of many dominoes to fall until the unnecessary barriers put in place to restrict access to the ballot box are removed. And on they go. There's so much of this. The Player Alliance standing up to this. You've got companies like Twitter, Microsoft, and others joining the MLB. Stacey Abrams of Georgia is in the middle. She's like, don't boycott us yet. Maybe we deserve it at some point, but don't boycott us yet. Well, damn, if it's Jim Crow 2.0, I think you deserve a boycott. But it's not. It's not Jim Crow 2.0. It's just a tagline that they're going with, which I think is dangerous because it really makes people feel when they watch that, they're like, damn, are we under attack because of the color of our skin? Is voting going to be reduced to nothingness in the state of Georgia? No. And on the other hand, is this some kind of perfect bill that's without any flaws that should be defended no matter what? Also, no. There's nobody who seems to be playing this right or certainly down the middle. And the president has time and time again made exaggerations about this. And it's hard to call them exaggerations when he was corrected on these and he continues to say
what
them.
I'm worried about is how un-American this whole initiative is. It's sick. It's sick. Deciding in some states that you cannot bring water to people standing in line,
that's not
waiting
true.
to vote. Deciding that you're going to end voting at 5 o'clock when working people are just getting off work.
Also not true.
Deciding that there will be no absentee ballots under the most rigid circumstances.
Also not true. He's saying these things over and over. That's not true. With the absentee ballots, let me explain this to you the best that I can. In this actual bill from the state of Georgia, where they require you to use your ID for these ballots, here's what it says. In order to verify the absentee ballot was voted by the elector who requested the ballot, that means I want to make sure it's yours. I want to make sure you are who you say you are, and you're the person who should be sending in this ballot. The elector shall print the card number of his or her Georgia driver's license number or identification card. 97% of eligible voters in the state of Georgia have this already. They have an ID or they have a driver's license, 97%. Let's get that other 3% set up. I'm not saying it's perfect, but let's get the other 3% set up. They said in the space provided on the outer oath envelope. The elector shall also print his or her date of birth in the space provided in the outer oath envelope. If the elector does not have, this is important, okay, pay attention. If the elector does not have a Georgia driver's license or state identification card, the elector shall so affirm in the space provided on the outer oath envelope and print the last 4 digits of his or her social security number. So if you don't have your license, if you don't have your ID, you have to put the last 4 digits of your social security number to verify who you are. If you don't have a driver's license, you don't have an ID card, and you don't have a social security number, you should affirm in the space provided on the outer oath envelope and place a copy of one of the forms of identification in the outer envelope. This could be an electric bill or anything else. My God, is that a huge barrier to entry for somebody with an absentee ballot? There's literally myriad ways you can prove you are who you say you are. Again, something that most Americans seem to be on board with. So what do you think about all of this? Do you think that the coverage of this has been bad? Do you think that Joe Biden is right? Do you think that the others who are calling this Jim Crow 2.0 or Jim Eagle are correct about this? Or are you with me where you say, this bill is not perfect by any means and there's some troubling stuff like the board of Republicans who would have a lot of power under this, but it's not Jim Crow 2.0. And we don't have to pretend that that's accurate. In fact, it could be dangerous to pretend that that's accurate. Is anybody sane anymore? Is anybody being fair and honest and open about things? Or are we all just going to lie about it to create something divisive so everybody continues to brawl? Tell me what you think about this in the comments below. I know you will. You always do, and I'll be reading these. If you liked what you saw here, share this with a friend of yours. I'd appreciate that. And make sure you're following. If you're new around here, go to facebook.com/thenewsjunkie and hit that follow button. You'll get videos just like this every single day. So go to facebook.com/thenewsjunkie and hit follow or subscribe on YouTube, and we'll talk to you again real soon.